LEVIDRAS EMPIREO, one of the best decks in set 5, so here we go. This is a guide on essentially how to build the deck, how the deck operates, and this is pretty much one of the best decks in the format come set 5, so this is something you'll see at your BCS. So we'll go through essentially the picks for the deck, or I guess like the ratios of the deck. Is very, very straightforward. This is as cookie cutter as it gets. This is, you know, the framework, right? You guys, well, we have set 4 at the moment, so pick up your stuff for LEVIDRAS because this deck is going to be probably the best deck in the format, right? So starting off with the grade 0, nothing too crazy. It's just a different design, grade 0, LEVIDRAS, you know, ride line grade 0. Here we go. That's pretty good. The grade 1, essentially if you are riding to the grade 2, you get to ride for free. Yeah, riding for free is great. We've seen it in Vanguard using the Virgila ride line, and you know, the fact that EMPIREO gets it, that's pretty cool too. The grade 2, if you ride a LEVIDRAS over this, you can EB3 top 5 search for grade 3 or less and add it to hand. Very important because essentially if you don't have any of your combo pieces or you're missing one of your combo pieces, this card allows you to get it, right? Then the grade 3, LEVIDRAS EMPIREO, pretty much the big star of the deck. This card is pretty nuts. So it has 3 skills essentially. So the first one is continuous Vanguard circle. For every LEVIDRAS in your soul, that is the original LEVIDRAS, this unit gains +5 and inherits all of the divine skills. So it's really important that you obviously try to hard mulligan for the old LEVIDRAS because it goes well with the second skill, which is act once per turn, counterblast 1 or put a card from your hand into soul, create 2 Infinity Eyes marker and place them on either yours or your opponent's rear guards. And if you put a LEVIDRAS or a grade 3 into soul, then you generate 3. This is really important, really important, right? When you get up to grade 3, you ideally want to create 3, and depending on the state of the game, if you're playing against a deck that's slow, something like Night Rose, then you want to generate 3 on your board and just bash their face, right? If you're playing against something that is super aggressive, or if you're playing second, for example, then you obviously want to lay some on your opponent's side of the field as well. But just having the extra 1 is like super crucial, right? Because let's be real, you know, you put a card from hand into soul, that card refunds itself later in the game because you're going to get rid of one of your opponent's Infinity Eyes marker. You draw 1 neg 10, it's like no brainer, right? So hard mulligan for LEVIDRAS grade 3, the old one, super important. And then auto Vanguard circle, if either your or your opponent's rear guard boosts or attacks, you can choose to give it 10k. Well, it has to be on an Infinity Eyes marker. If you choose your opponent's rear guard or the card that is on the Infinity Eyes marker, then you can neg 10k, remove the marker and draw 1, right? So essentially TLDR is if the Infinity Eyes marker is on your board and your unit attacks again +10, if it's your opponent's side, then you can get rid of the marker to neg 10 and draw 1, right? Pretty simple stuff. So this is obviously the skill that inherits from the old grade 3, but that's what makes LEVIDRAS so good, because this deck, as much as it's aggressive, it is very defensive as well. It can drag games long and essentially, you know, just wither out your opponent and then get to a stage where it's practically unstoppable, yeah? So, set 5 introduces a new grade 3, which is this musketeer looking unit. So it has 2 skills. So the first one is act from drop zone. If you do not have another grade 3 with this card's name on the board, you can soul blast 1 and call it. Really important, right? Literally a soul blast 1 for a free attacker, and it's a pretty beefy attacker, right? You put it on an Infinity Eyes marker, it's 23. And then obviously the second skill as well, or the rear guard circle when this unit attacks, you can retire one of your other rear guards and this unit gains +10. End of battle, you can sack this card and retire this card and then draw 1, right? Literally soul blast 1 to draw a card and a 33k attacker on an Infinity Eyes marker, like for free practically, because like soul's not really an issue for you, right? So yeah, this card, amazing card. Pretty much you kind of want to spam this and just get a full board. Generally, this card is in the back row because you have your 2 intercepts in the front row, and then you obviously have this next card. Well, coming up to the next card, this Arogaster or whatever it's called. So essentially, the grade 2 that attacks from back row, right? Cool. So yeah, that's the grade 3. Really, really strong. Opt to play it in the back row, like corner rear guards, because it essentially retires itself and draws 1, so that you can keep your grade 2s in the front row for intercepts. Then LEVIDRAS, the old one, essentially there just for Imperio skill. Really, this card, the more you put it into Soul, the stronger Imperio gets, because it gains 5k for each copy of this card in Soul. Also, it's really important because it has a Divine skill. So as long as LEVIDRAS is in Soul, Imperio inherits the Divine skill, which is pretty important. So Divine skill acts Vanguard. If your opponent is grade 3 or greater, you can Soul Blast 1. Choose one of your opponents and one of your rear guards and create an Infinity Eyes marker, put it on those rear guards, and then this unit gains plus 10k plus 1 crit. So that means Imperio gets plus 10 and 1 crit. So ideally, if you're going second, then you kind of want to use the Divine skill straight away. There's no reason to not use it straight away. But yeah, it's just like creating you markers to be able to wither down your opponent, like from turn, like especially if you're going second, you know, their turn 4 onward, their turn 5, it just makes it significantly weaker, right? Arrogasta, or whatever this card is called, essentially, you know, is a place on rear guard, energy blast 3. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to hand, put the last 1 to top or bottom, and this unit gains plus 5. Really strong, like gets you all your pieces. You can stack triggers as well, like insane card, right? Continuous rear guard, if this unit is in the back row, and you have 3 or more Infinity Eyes marker, this unit gains plus 5k and can attack from back row, right? Really strong because essentially you want to pair this with the Musketeer grade 2. So essentially you have this in the back row that can back row attack. You have the Musketeer grade 3 in the back row that can back row attack off the grade 1 booster, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then you have your 2 intercepts in the front row, and then you have like 2 5ks that you can intercept, right? So you have 2 intercepts, 2 back row attackers, and you're essentially getting 5 attacks off. Really, really strong. So yeah, this card is pretty nuts. Then we play Huli. This, I can't believe this card is a rare. I didn't even realize it was a rare, but essentially when it's placed on rearguard circle, you essentially can counterblast 1, search for a grade 3 or less, and call it. And if you have 3 or more Infinity Eyes marker, this unit gains plus 10. So it's a 28k attacker. If you have 3 or more Infinity Eyes units, you put it on top of an Infinity Eyes marker, it's 30k, Persona Rides 40k. You can see how the numbers escalate, right? It's really important because this card essentially revives into other things, right? And you can also chain it with the next reviver, which is the Dual Nation. So when this unit is placed on rear guard outside of the battle phase from hand, you can counterblast 1, choose one of the 2 abilities, grab an order, add it to your hand, or choose a grade 2 or less card and call it. So this can essentially fish you Hulis. Huli is just on place, so you can chain the Saphira into Huli into Arrasca or whatever it's called, the spider, right? I'm gonna call it the spider. So Saphira into Huli into spider, and you Soul Blast 1 into Musketeer. Like that's your 4 units on the board, and then you have the middle column is like whatever, right? The real important piece about this card is that you can call grade 1s as well. So if your opponent retires your Foxil, it's really important that you bring it back, because Foxil is essentially your next attacker, right? Then we have this one Squirrel. It's a very niche card. We only run 1 copy of it just as like an alternate attacking option. So essentially, once per turn, after it boosts, you can Soul Blast 1, move it to an empty rearguard circle, and if that circle has an Infinity Eyes marker, you can stand it against plus 5. So you can pair this with Foxil. So what it does is that you attack Vanguard first, Foxil's skill give the Squirrel the attack from back row skill, and then you interchange the Squirrel from one rearguard to another, as long as it has an Infinity Eyes marker and then can restand and just attack, right? Because Foxhill allows for the back row attack. So enough talking about Foxhill. What does it do? So essentially it is a 15k booster to LEVIDRAS, but the most important bit is the second bit where when it boosts, obviously you can counterblast 1, choose a unit, it gains +10 and can attack from back row, right? So you're essentially targeting your Musketeer. You obviously don't want to target your Spider because the Spider attacks from back row inherently already. But yeah, if you have a grade 3 or greater LEVIDRAS, then this unit gains +5, right? So 13k booster by default, but 15k pretty much from the second skill, yeah. So Foxhill, really, really strong, must have, must play for, no doubt about it, right? And it came out in set 4, which is the current set for the English meta, so pick it up, you know, pick it up. It's really, really cheap. Then we play one of this guy. This guy's art is really cool, like dig the, you know, color schemes and whatnot. But essentially after it attacks or boosts, you can put this unit, well, if you haven't counter charge already, put it into Soul and counter charge 1, right? Just an option to be able to counter charge, really. This deck does use a bit of CB, especially if you're using Saphira into Huli, that's 2 CB. And then if you're using like LEVIDRAS, for some reason you're not using the CB, Foxhill uses CB, so there's just alternate ways to be able to get counter charge back, right? Then we play a 3-1 split of PGs and Elementaria. So there is a debate where you can change this to run the other Elementaria because it's crest based, right? So crest based means that you're beating all Strat deck sets, you're beating Love and Berry, you're like beating other crest related decks, right? But in the same token, you can use this to play against Liel because Liel gets triple drive. So it's essentially a free PG, but you know, it depends on what your metagame is. If it's very crest heavy, then use the other Elementaria Sancta 2. Then for the Regalis, we play Radiance Caliburn. To be honest, you can play any Regalis really. There's like decks playing Evergreen, Union the Sky is also another one, but I think Union the Sky is probably the least likely one because you want to use your EB for the Spider. So maybe like Evergreen or Twincast. So these are the 3 Regalis that you would put in, but I would use Radiance Caliburn. Draw 2 means you're drawing into 2 of your combo pieces, or you put it into Soul, counter charge 1, and you know, you get a counter charge and a Soul. The Soul is really important. Then the last card for the main deck outside of triggers is Mystaiarch Habitat. On place, top 7, core 1, that is equal or less than your Vanguard's grade. Really important because you essentially need to dig for your pieces in the early game. If you see this, you're pretty happy. There are decks where they just cut the Habitat for the Grade 3 Musketeer, but I think like, I find that if you find your Spider, the Spider finds you into stuff, and having a top 7 check for essentially this being the 5th copy of every other attacker is just too good, right? So you're only playing 1. You can, to be honest, it's like a flex slot here, as you can pretty much change it to whatever. Then the trigger lineup, so you play 4 heals, 8 crits, 3 fronts, and the Stoic Hair OT. There are decks that play the purple OT. You know, both kind of fit the, I guess, the idea of the deck. But I think like Stoic Hair OT is just really good, right? Like front heal crit draw is just insane, yeah. There are times where like you get late into the game, it's really grindy, you hit like the Stoic Hair OT, you get to heal down, you just get so much advantage from it that there's no reason not to play it, right? Front row plus 10 because you're usually attacking with your Vanguard first and then using Foxhill to give back row attack to something else. It's just really good, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the deck. How this deck kind of plays is you get free ride, you use the Spider on grade 2, and then you essentially want to drop your Foxhill as early as possible behind your Vanguard to confirm a damage. The higher your opponent's damage is, the better this deck becomes because it's straight out of the gate 5 attacks. You want to mull for LEVIDRAS grade 3 and ideally the Spider. I think these two are just really strong starting cards. And then the next one would be probably Foxil. Hooli doesn't really work, neither does Saphira in the early game. It's not as impactful as any of the other cards in the deck, purely because you need a bin, right? If you don't have a drop zone, then these cards are kind of useless. So ideally you want to mull for LEVIDRAS and the Spider, and then after that your mulligan would be for like Foxil and then Persona Ride, maybe like the Musketeer as well. But these are extenders that allow you to create your board after you've established a drop zone. But other than that, that's pretty much your mulligan targets. When you ride to grade 3, you ideally want to put a LEVIDRAS into Soul, creating 3 markers. If you're going second, you want to maybe look at using your Divine skill to essentially have the recovery from going second, right? So there's a huge gap at the moment because obviously it's a going first meta at the moment for Japan at least. And being able to create Infinity Hour markers on your opponent's side of the board is really important, because it just means that your opponent gets slowed down because of the Infinity Hours marker, but then in the same token, you know, you're still able to retaliate back because you're generating 3 on your board as well. So if you're going first, however, EMPIREO, chuck the LEVIDRAS into Soul, create 3. If your hand is good, then don't worry about putting it onto your opponent's rear guard. Just put all 3 on your rear guards, and then just bash, 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 like what, 5 attacks, right? So you have your Spider in the back row, Musketeer in the back row, 2 front row rear guards or whatever, and then Foxil boosting Vanguard. It's like pretty good. Then the next turn, you generate 3 again, generate 2 off the Divine skill, and then you pretty much just like control the board at that point, right? Sometimes, like, as the game progresses, you ideally want to guard with Hooli if you have the option of keeping Hooli or Saphira. I think Saphira is better, but obviously you need to also take into account the CB as well, right? Good thing is that Saphira essentially calls anything but your grade 3s, and your grade 3s are never being called or auto calls itself. And then like Saphira into Hooli into Spider is like too good, right? So if you get to keep 1, I guess I would keep Saphira, try to guard with Hooli before Saphira because they can chain into each other, right? The scroll is not a big deal. Scroll only works if you have Foxil. So if you have Foxil, you're gaming, right? The counter charger, if you see this in the early game, just mull it. There's not really a need for it. It's just there in case, just as an option to be able to revive it back and then, you know, counter charge if you ever need it. Yeah. So as the game progresses, obviously you want to build on your Infinity Hours markers and use them wisely. Obviously against Liel, for example, you want to kind of keep the Infinity Hours markers lingering on their side of the board, especially for like their turn 4, their turn 5, where they get the extra turn. Just reducing an attack by 10k is just ridiculous. Actually helps you survive that matchup, but if the game goes too long, then, you know, it might be a problem, right? And this deck ideally gets its advantage by reducing your opponent's power and then getting rid of the marker to draw 1, and that's how the deck sustains. Yeah. So, you know, this deck, I think, in my opinion, is one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the format. I think it's literally got everything. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if like the BCS distribution with this deck is like off the charts. Probably not as big as like Shu Nui back in the day when it was like unbanned first out of the Stride deck set. It's not like those numbers, but I think the proportion of players playing LEVIDRAS will, you know, see a huge increase from what it is in set 4. So yeah, that is pretty much the LEVIDRAS guide for you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. If you like this video, pop a like, and if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.